Welcome to the Branding Room Only podcast, where we share career stories, strategies, and lessons learned on how industry leaders and influencers have built their personal brands. Now, let's get started with the show. Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Branding Room. It's Paula Edgar, your host. Very, very excited to be here with really one of the funniest and one of my most favorite people ever, Mary Abbajay. Mary Abbajay is the president of Careerstone Group and the author of Managing Up, How to Move Up, Win at Work, and Succeed with Any Type of Boss. And she is the president of Cornerstone Group, which is a full-service organizational and leadership development consultancy that delivers leading edge talent and organizational development solutions to business and government. Mary is also a LinkedIn learning instructor, the co-host of the popular weekly workplace advice podcast, Cubicle Confidential, and a frequent expert contributor for television, radio, and print publications. Also, again, she is the funniest person that I have met. Mary, welcome to the Branding Room.
Oh my gosh, Paula. Now people are going to expect me to be funny. And that's a really high bar.
I'm going to just say, I don't care what they expect. They're going to get what we're going to give them. And it is.
Of course, you didn't say whether I was funny, haha, or funny, weird. So that'll be up to them to determine by the end of this.
Well, for those of you who are watching, you'll see me holding up her book, which she was just holding up. And I encourage you all to get it. It will be linked in your show notes. But Mary, you are in the Branding Room, so you have to answer some questions that everybody has to answer. Number one being, how do you define personal brand?
I define it as how you want people to think of you when you're not in the room. So it's sort of an expectation of experience, an expectation of what people are going to experience with you. So it's kind of like your reputation and your intention rolled into one. That was a really bad definition.
No, I love that. No, that was reputation and intention is perfect. It's what you want and what they want.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Because we have an intention of how we want to be seen and experienced by people. And that's our brand, our intention, but our reputation is how people actually experience us. So I think when you think about branding, it has to meld both what you want to be and who you really are.
Yes, the impact and the intention and the impact.
Yep.
Oh, I love it. Okay, so how would you describe yourself in 3 words or short phrases?
I would say enthusiastic, authentic, and positive.
Yes. I'm going to take podcast host benefit and say also impactful.
Aw,
yes.
Thank you. That means a lot. I mean, that's what my deep desire is, to be impactful, to help other people, find the success in their work life that they deserve. So that means a lot. Thank you.
You're welcome. And it's true. So that works out even better too.
I know. But I mean, I think that's one of the things when people do their brand is, a lot of times I think, especially for women, we're afraid to say how we really want to be seen. Like we're afraid to really dig into our why and our purpose. And I think it's really important. So I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, good. All right. So tell me, do you have a favorite quote or mantra?
Oh my gosh. I do have a favorite quote, and that is, I think it's from Chrissy Hines, and it's something like, all of us are living in the gutter, but some of us are looking at the stars. It goes something like that. And I just love that because no matter where you are, where you put your attention and your intention really matters. So that was my favorite one.
That's a good reflection on perspective.
Yeah. How about you? Do you have a favorite quote or mantra?
I do. It's my mother used to say to me when I was growing up, you can either be the wind or the leaf. So for me, it is my guiding star, literally, where I think about my impact and I want to direct it as opposed to letting it direct me. I want to say, this is what I want and who I want to be and how I show.
That is awesome. I might have to borrow that.
Oh, please do. Please do. Please do. Okay. So I'm excited for the answer for this. So what is your hype song? And the way I describe this is it's either the song that is playing in your head when you're about to get on stage and walk in the room, or if you're having a bad day, the song you're playing to get you out of that space. So
that's really easy because I actually request it whenever I'm on a stage that will do that. And it's Gotta Be Real by Cheryl Lynn.
Yes.
Because I think that's one of my things is I try to be very authentic and very real. So I love that song very much.
Oh, that's a good one. The mixtape for this is going to be so fire. Uh, I'm putting together all of my guest songs and making it into an annual playlist. So I'm just so excited. All right. So in your bio, we talked about you being an author. We talked about you being a LinkedIn Learning instructor, but give me a little bit about your career and then lead that into how you built your personal brand.
Oh, so my career has been very varied, like a lot of people. Like I didn't really know what I wanted to do. So I kept just trying things and stopped doing what I didn't want to do. Hopefully that I would find out what I want to do. So, I did a stint in marketing. I did a stint in public relations. I did a stint for a startup company. And then I did a stint in politics, working for the chairman of the city council. And then I was working for him when he killed himself. Yeah, the chairman of the city council DC. This was in the 90s. This was last century. And so then I was like, oh no, I need to find a job. So my sister and I opened up a bar in Washington, D.C. And we owned it and it was super popular. It was called the Toledo Lounge, people, if anyone's in the D.C. in the 90s. And then we did a nightclub after that, very popular, but I hated it. I hated both of those because they were very boring. And I was trying to figure out, but I was fascinated by two things. One, the building of the business I thought was really neat and cool and challenging. And the dynamics of watching people and the team. And because we were so successful, people would come to us all the time or to me and say, like, how did you do that? How did you build a great team? How did you build that business? And I found, Paula, that what I loved was like helping other people be successful. Like I literally love giving people not advice, but like helping them think through what they wanted to do and some advice. And I heard several times from people, well, you should be a consultant because you're so helpful. And I'm like, that's a good idea. So I went back to school, got a couple of degrees, a couple of masters, and that's when I started because I really found out that my passion was helping other people find their passion or find their value in their work life. So that was how I kind of built my brand around being helpful and being positive.
I love that.
And because when we were starting our business, Paula, when we were starting the bar, one thing that I remembered was all the people that said to us, like 99.9% of people said to us, you're going to fail. There's no way you can do that. Like, that's just not going to work. And I just thought that was bullshit. Can I say that on this podcast? Can I say that? And I just thought that was bullshit and unhelpful. So I really wanted to take the other tack as part of building my brand and really find a way to be positive and helping people achieve what they want to achieve, even when it means overcoming some obstacles.
I think people reverse engineer me all the time because if you tell me I can't do something, then I'm going to do it. So people say things I can't do so that they can get me to do the things they want. But that's a whole nother story for my therapist.
If I want you to, there's something I don't want you to do, I should say, oh, Paul, that's so easy for you. Then you're like, you're right, it is.
Right, exactly. I'll leave that one alone then. Yes. Okay. So that's helpful. So then taking all of that and putting that into the business owner, consultant space, telling people what to do, sometimes with advice. How then did you build your brand to be known in this space?
So I think that for a long time, I didn't really think about a brand. So for a while, it was all about building the brand of the company Career Stone. So we built that brand by delivering great work and really focusing on a few kind of dynamics in our work. So we wanted our training to be fun, to be funny, to be interactive, and to be really people-centered. So we really kind of broke the mold of the old baby boomer style of training where it's like sage on stage, let me tell you, and like really broke it up. So there was no more than 15 minutes of content and then interactive activity. So we started building the brand of the business first. And the consulting and the facilitation side, we started just really thinking about how we could be truth tellers with love. Like, how do we tell people the truth, especially when you're talking about dysfunctional teams or leadership that isn't cutting it? So that's how we did that, mostly through practice. And then I wrote a book. And then suddenly I was like, ruh-roh, I've got to become a brand myself. So that I have to admit was really hard for me. It's
Mhm.
really hard, I think, for a lot of people, I think a lot of women to
Mhm.
talk about yourself, like
Mhm.
I kind of thought the world was meritocracy. And if I just worked really hard, all these good things would come to me. And so I had to really literally like read some books on it
Mhm.
and start to practice it and like really think about my social media. What do I want to be known for? If I'm promoting this book, who am I to promote this book? So I started doing a little social media. I started writing and I really started asking my clients, what is it about me like that stands out to you? And they would say things, like you were so energetic or you're so positive. So I had to kind of define my brand and then figure out how to build it.
Oh, I love that. I hear often because, what we do is similar in that I talk to folks about branding and I love that. I'm going to definitely steal the truth telling with love. I'm going to be like,
Yeah.
here, come here. You suck with love.
I bet you're good at that though.
I think people come to me because they know that I am not in the space. I don't like to waste my own time. And so I want to make sure that our time together is valuable. And I do that being authentic and being truthful as well. And I come with every place with love because I try to be a joyful person every single day. So that is true.
People can tell whether you're coming at them with love or you're coming at them with like ego or whether you're coming at them with some sort of other agenda.
Yeah. Yes. Agreed 100%. So tell me, how then did you become a LinkedIn learning instructor?
So, it's funny because I work really hard and then there's luck, right? That comes in. And, Rachel Feinberg, I think that's her last name, just wrote a really interesting piece on luck in the Wall Street Journal.
Uh-huh.
And, I think anyone who reaches success, and some measure of success, there's got to be some luck involved. So the bottom line is somebody introduced me to a LinkedIn learning producer and that person ghosted me. And then out of the blue, without even knowing that I was introduced to someone else, a LinkedIn learning instructor happened to see either my book or happened to see someone told her about seeing me on stage and she reached out to me. And that's how it happened.
Oh, look at the universe.
Yeah.
I think that's a really great story in proving something that I believe it deeply. So I believe in intention setting. Every year I do an annual intention and goal setting thing. I do for anybody on the world who wants to take it, because I believe that there's a collective space of intention. And even though that person ghosted you, the intention was already set. Like it was like, yep, I'm going to be this. And look at what happened.
Oh my God. It's crazy. And I have to say, like being a LinkedIn learning instructor, it was one of the funnest things I've ever done, like recording those. But it was thrilling. It was really thrilling. And since then I've done another course. So it's been really fun.
I love that. All of the folks in my...
But the same thing happened with my book too.
Tell the story.
So I was folding laundry one afternoon and because, I am my own boss and it was like on a Friday or something. And this a woman calls and she says, hello, this is Janine Ray. I'm from Wiley Publishing. And I'd love to talk with you about doing a book. So I think, oh my God, this is a crank call. Like, this is like BS. And I'm like, okay, like, sure. What is it? She's like extolling the virtues of having a book out there, blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking to myself, this is some self-publishing, like hook. You're going to and I said, listen, Janine, is that your name? Let me cut you off right here. And I said, how much is all this going to cost me? And there's this audible gasp on the other side of the phone. She said, Mary, we're Wiley. We would never charge our authors. I was like, oh my God, this is real. So
this is not spam risk?
I know, like, oh my God, I thought someone was breaking me. And then I said to her, I'd love to, but I really can't. I had just put my father at the time into assisted living in Ohio. Mm-hmm. So I was flying back and forth all the time from DC. Mm-hmm. And she said, you know what? Why don't I call you back in January and we'll talk then? And I thought, great, thank you. I'm thinking I'll never hear from this woman again. She called me back in January and we made it happen.
That is, first of all, I need your number so I can change it to mine.
And I always tell people I'm not a lucky person, but every now and then I've had some really lucky things happen.
That is a fantastic story. I know. I asked you.
I'm blushing just remembering how stupid I was going, how much will this cost me?
Girl, who is this? Who
is this?
So the first time that I saw you speak, I saw you speaking about managing up and I was like so excited for two reasons. Number one is and I don't know if you feel this way, and I'm just going to show I'm going to be in a very vulnerable space, and I often will sit and when people are presenting, I'll be like, okay, waiting for what else going to happen, and I'm like, this is how they should do it, and I was sitting there riveted the entire time, and I was learning, and I love because I always say I'm never going to take another test, and I'm not going to any other school. So every time I get a chance to learn, it's like me going back to school, and I love being in school. I just refuse to take another test to do it. So I was like, oh my gosh. And then she's teaching stuff, and I loved it. And I remember I actually pulled out the notes that I had from when I saw you speak, and I wrote like 3 pages of things down because I was excited and I was motivated, and it was wonderful. So when I saw you that first time, I was like, one of these days I'm going to get her on my podcast, and it just started. And then I saw you speaking about feedback, which is my favorite topic other than branding to talk about. And the same thing happened because, we can have the same topics in our dossier, but how you come at it and the perspective is really so innovative and very thoughtful. And I loved it. And so I was like, okay, well, I have to talk to Mary about how managing up and giving and receiving feedback impacts your brand. And so you're here, and I manifested it. So anyway.
Okay, but wait a minute, Paula. Wait a minute. I want all our listeners and viewers to understand, I feel the same way about Paula Egder. So I, too, go to different people's presentations, and I'm like, yeah, what you got? Show me what you got. And then I'm usually pretty much like, but with you, I've seen you speak twice, and each time I was like this. I thought you were fantastic. I thought your listeners and viewers, so you've never seen Paula live on stage, run, don't walk to see her. She has tremendous content, and her delivery is fun, funny, and right on. So I feel the same way. So I'm so flattered that
we go together. It's all good. Okay. So
not fangirl, love girl. Everyone's like, okay, like, girls.
Mutual fan club. Okay. So I want you to tell me and tell the audience about the concept of managing up. What is it?
Favorite subject. So managing up is about how you manage one of the most important relationships in your workplace, and that is the relationships that you have with your bosses, your managers, your leaders. And so when I talk about managing up, I'm not talking about managing the person, I'm talking about managing the relationship. And managing up, even though some people are misguided, is not about sucking up. It's not about being a sycophant or someone's patsy or kissing someone's ass. That is manipulation. When we talk about managing up, we're talking about intentionally, proactively creating the most positive and productive working relationship with someone above you in the food chain so that you can succeed, they can succeed, and the organization can succeed. It's about really understanding how to navigate different personality preferences, different levels of power, different priorities, different personalities, so that you can win, they can win, and the organization can win. So that is really what I mean by managing up. It is not about sucking up, because hey, our bosses, your bosses, listeners, your bosses, and we all got one. Even Paul and I have bosses. They're called their clients. Our bosses have a lot of influence over our career trajectory. They have a lot of influence over our own leadership journey. And as much as we wish it wasn't true, we can't change them or control them. So you're much better off figuring out how to navigate them successfully. So that is what I mean by managing up.
Ooh, can't change or control. Sounds like my therapy sessions.
Oh my God. I wish, like, think about you can't change or control anyone in your life. I wish I could, because my husband would be emptying the dishwasher right now and folding the laundry correctly.
Somebody would be ordering me Chick-fil-A. But anyway, okay. So tell me, especially because you use the words influence. I always think about influence can happen in so many ways in different organizations. And as you know, I do a lot of things in law firms, and there's the titles, right, like partner, et cetera, that you come with influence, but then there's also the sort of people who have been there for a long time, or the different ways that influence shows up. But no matter what, to your point, if somebody is supervising you, they have an influence because they're controlling a part of your trajectory. Yeah. So how does effectively managing up and thinking about the perspective of influence and how it works in the workplace, how does that impact a personal brand?
Oh, well, a lot, because your brand, it depends. If your brand is your intention, right? And if part of your brand is to be seen as a trusted colleague or a go-getter or a super smart lawyer or whatever it is, that brand gets manifested by your relationships with other people. And so if you want to have a brand, you have to think about what part of your brand is reliant on your ability to create these positive workplace relationships, whether they're up, down, or across from the organization. So here's an example. If part of my brand is I want to be known as a team player, which by the way, I don't. But if I want to be known as a team player, then I have to actually be a team player. And if other people don't experience me as a team player, and they don't, then I need to remove that from my brand, because that's when we get into the difference between your brand and your reputation, right? So your reputation is built by how other people experience you, like your leaders and your bosses. And if you want your brand to be promoted by other people, so let's say your brand and your reputation are aligned, your boss and people of influence and power have a lot of influence on promoting your brand, right? Because if I have a great relationship with you, Paula, and let's say I'm your boss, and
Yay, I'm so excited.
We'll just stay for 5 minutes, And if I'm having a really positive experience with you, then I'm going to talk about you in a positive way to other people. And that's how your brand gets promoted. If I have a not great experience with you, I might either say, Paula, she's okay. Or, I'd rather work with so-and-so. So that's, I think, where it really becomes important.
Yeah, I was in a conversation with a client earlier today, and they were talking about sponsorship programs and that there was a partner who would be working with an associate, and that associate had made a mistake. And what that partner then did was to go around and tell every other partner that associate had made a mistake. And I was sitting there like, but we're supposed to be able to make mistakes and then get better, et cetera. But when you think about your brand and how you carry it, but if you have enough influence that no one else will want to work with that associate because you said they made a mistake, that influence can work in a lot of different ways, for evil, like with a little, or for good. And that's why it's really important to think about that. And I find so often that people are just like, well, that's my boss, like, right, without any real sort of strategy or thought about this. And truly, if you're ambitious with a capital A, like me, then you have to think about all of the interactions with folks who have influence and how they can impact your brand and how they can help you to get to whatever your goal is. So I love that. I love how you just wove that in there.
Well, I like what you said, because, when you think about building your brand, especially with people higher up or even people across from you, even people below you, but you want to think about every interaction, right? Every interaction makes a difference. And I like to tell people that, after an interaction with me, I want people to feel good about three things. I want them to feel good about the interaction, even if it was challenging, but I want them to feel that it was a productive interaction. I want them to feel good about me, like I showed up well, but I also want them to feel good about themselves, right? And I think when we can really understand that every interaction, especially with our bosses, matters, and it matters for our brand, I think that helps people sort of be actually even more intentional around how they are showing up and how they're interacting.
Agree with that. So what are some strategies? Don't give us all the strategies because everybody's going to buy the book. but what are some things maybe two things that you think that folks who are trying to be better manager-uppers should do?
All right, I'll give you the simple framework, right? Okay. The simple framework. The simple framework is, first of all, you have to really notice who this person is. So if you're talking about your immediate boss, pay attention to who they really are and how they operate, not who you wish they were. Like, don't get in a judgy place. Like, oh my God, they should do this or they should do that. Pay attention to things like their communication style, their work pace. How collaborative are they? How do they like to? Communication is huge. Are they detail people? Big picture people? Really pay attention to their punctuality, like these things, like their work style, how they communicate and how they collaborate without judging them. And once you have a really good sense about how they operate, who they really are, not who you wish they are, then take a good look at how you are, who you are. And again, right, Paula, how you really are, not how you think you are. This is time for self-awareness. What's it like to work with you? And so once you have a good sense about who they are and who you are, then you can look in the middle and see if there's any gaps. And then when you can take a good look at the gaps and how you guys operate, then you get to determine what it is that you want to do about those gaps. And you could either decide to do a little adaptive relationship, stuff. So maybe I'll talk a little faster when I'm talking with Mary. Maybe I'll get to the bottom line quicker when I'm talking with Paula. What can you do a little more of, a little less of, a little differently in order to close that gap? That's one choice, which I think is a great choice. The next choice is to basically be like, you know what? We're just going to be different. And I'm going to be okay with that, right? That's the key. I'm going to be okay with our differences. I'm not going to get wound around the axle and angry. I'm going to accept it. It's like what the Buddhists say, accept it. And then your third choice of dealing with differences is always just to leave, right? Just to go find another boss. But you don't want to get, when you work differently than somebody, the anger and frustration is not your friend. That puts you into amygdala hijack. So that's why I'd say really figure out who you are, who your boss is, what you can do more of, less of, or differently, or what you can request from them to do more of, less of, or differently to make that work. And, people will often say to me, but, Mary, if you say to me, I should ask more questions of my boss, or I should talk up more with my boss, that's not being authentic. And then I have to remind people that authenticity is not being the exact same person. And it's not the same behaviors everywhere, right? So people, Paula, I think she might join me on this. In real life, I swear like a sailor
100%.
that wants to be a truck driver. But it doesn't make us inauthentic if we're not dropping F-bombs every 5 minutes. So it makes us appropriate. So it's about adjusting your behavior or your choices of interaction a little bit in order to build that better relationship.
Yeah, no, first of all, yes, again, I'm a girl from Brooklyn. I do love a cuss word. But when I was just thinking about what you were saying, I thought this is also relationship advice.
Yes.
Right? Like not just your boss, but if you think of me, I've been married for 20 years. He's lucky. And I think to myself, yes, there are things that I have to choose. That is who he is. Yeah. And it's not going to change. And I just have to accept it. Yeah. And then there are things where I'm like, hey, it would be really great if you got to the point. Whatever the thing is,
land the plane, honey. Right. Land the plane.
That's what I need. And so I do think that while you may think this is business advice, it is relationship advice that can help you in all different spaces if you think about it strategically. And I think that all of those things help your brand personally and professionally. So I love that.
I think so too. I mean, resisting who your boss is not going to be helpful. They got to where they are based on who they are, right?
Not until you leave. Resist the way after you're gone. When you're still there, it's not helpful to you. Okay, so let's talk about feedback.
Okay.
So let's talk about receiving feedback first, because I do think this is the hardest thing for folks, and in particular, how it impacts your brand. So I will just say this, and then you tell me how this lands for you.
Okay.
I always say you have to have, like what Tyra Banks used to say, a smile face when you are receiving feedback. Like, for example, if you are not telling me something that I like, I get black girl face. I'm like, what? Like my eyes are I'm doing this. But instead, I have a very neutral face that just does, and my eyes are smiling at you. And I'm just holding it in. I'm pinching the bottom of my thigh so that I don't lunge at you like that. So tell me about the art of receiving feedback in terms of it impacting your brand.
Yeah. So I think, first of all, in order to really understand your brand, you need to be seeking feedback, right? I mean, if you really want to know what your brand is, you need to reach out to people that know you and ask them, like, what are the 5 adjectives you would use to describe me, right? Do that exercise. What am I known for? And be ready to hear the feedback, because the feedback you receive, the good, the bad, and the ugly, are almost always going to be directly related to your brand, right? In some format. So the first piece of advice I would give while you're giving your, what did you call it, face, your smile space? I would say, take a deep breath and really listen. Yeah. That person is telling you something important. There is always a golden nugget in that feedback, even if you disagree with it. Even if the golden nugget is simply you now have a better idea of how this person thinks of you, right? Really try to hear the feedback and see what you can find that's helpful and true and actionable. The other thing I would say is when you're receiving feedback, remember, even though it's poorly given, and it usually is, there is something you can use. And this feedback is usually going to be about a behavior that you did, an action that you took. It's not about who you are as a person, right? Sheila Heen has that book, Thanks for the Feedback, even though it's dumb, stupid, and like, I'm not in the mood. And she talks about those 3 triggers, right? The it's not true trigger. Well, it might not be true, but there might be something in there. The identity trigger, where what you tell me, I catastrophize it. And the relationship trigger, which is the third thing I was going to say. And pay it. Don't let the who that's telling you the feedback get in the way of seeing anything that's valuable. So take a deep breath, reflect, always thank the person, but don't necessarily bat it out. See what parts of it can be true, and then see how you can use that.
Yes. I mean, that is excellent advice. I remember when I was a young attorney and I was working at a nonprofit, and one of my bosses, because I had several bosses, they pulled me to the side. We were at an event and said, I think you're too familiar with folks. And for me, it was like, why don't you just slap me across my face and tell me not to be Paula? Because I personalized it. I was like, wait, I am familiar. Like, I'm going to hug you. As long as you smile, I love you. Like, it's what it is. And then I was like, well, they're wrong. But I was like, no, wait, she's actually right. I am very familiar with people, but that's what resonates, right? As opposed to me not being that way. And so I had to choose to say, I get it, that I'm not her people. And I also get that the people who I'm supposed to be there for, they connect with me. And that's what I was doing. And so just taking it away from the person and then saying, what is my impact? What my mission is here? And am I feeding that mission by being how I am or not? And if so, then maybe I'll shift. But I was like, no, I'm going to stay the same. I'm good to go. And now I'm here and I'm flying. Anyway, okay.
No, I love that. But, that is like, had you decided, like, had you taken that too far and been like, oh my God, and like pulled back and been cold, you wouldn't be Paula. But, that also was helpful because it probably alerted you that some people probably don't really like so much familiarity. So you can start to pay attention to be able to gauge it. So that was really helpful.
100%.
I would think, because you get to decide what to do with it. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that's why that person never gets hugs from me. Anyway.
You can always hug me, Paula. I'm an Arab. We love the hugging.
I love it. I love it. Okay. So tell me, giving feedback. People only want to give feedback when it's good feedback, right? Like, hey, you're the best thing that's ever happened to me. Bye. See you on Thursday. But when you have to give constructive and potentially challenging feedback, talk about that process and how it can impact your brand as the person giving and for the person receiving.
So I think that's such a great question, thinking about it from a brand point of view. So I'm just going to give a little context. So one of the things that we know in organizational life is that people are not getting enough feedback. So study after study shows that like 78% of employees say they're not getting enough feedback, and something like 60% of managers think they are giving enough feedback. So we're not giving enough feedback. So for you to, and organizations with high feedback cultures have higher retention, higher engagement rates, higher productivity rates, because it shows that you are invested in people. So to get over so I'm saying all this because if you're not good at giving feedback or you don't like it, start liking it, because it is going to be helpful, because you will be seen as a person that cares about the development of other people. So before you go to give feedback, I want you to get really clear on the why of the feedback. This is the most important thing. All feedback should be given in the workplace with the intention of helping the other person. And you've got to ground it in that. That's the only reason to give constructive feedback, is that you want to help this person succeed. And then you really want to pick out, you want to get really specific around what the feedback is, your intention in giving it. And then you've got to figure out whether or not you do the whole SBI, situation, behavior, impact, blah, blah, blah. But I think that what I don't like about that model is it leaves out the intention, which I think is most important. Because if I came to you, Paula, I had some difficult feedback, but I set my intention first and I told you, so Paula, I need to talk to you about XYZ project. I'm bringing this up because I think that you are a spectacular performer and I really want you to be successful here. And I fear this may be an obstacle that I wanted to make you aware of. Boom. I've already sort of like taken your fear a little bit away, and I put you on the same side of the table with me.
Yeah.
And then you go through the feedback. And then I think people also, when they're giving feedback, and so anyway, if you can do that successfully, give people constructive, actionable feedback, then that is going to rise your brand as someone who's a straight shooter, someone who cares about other people, someone willing to have tough conversations, and people will respect you more.
I agree 1,000%. And actually, when I saw you speaking about this, I thought to myself, because I love SBI because it's tactical, like look, and look. But I was like, yes, of course it's missing the heart space.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
It's missing that empathy where it's like, hey, I want you to be good. So here's why I'm telling you this thing. And I think that is so core, because usually it's you get into my nerves because this is what the thing that you did, and that is why feedback hits, because it's like personal and it's like coming from a place of anger and frustration. And again, relationship advice. So,
and everyone's going to get defensive. So the thing that happens, I read a really interesting study on this a couple of years ago. And what often happens is people stay on the problem for a long time. Like, why did you do that? How did that? And the longer you stay in that space, the more defensive the other person becomes. And that's when the fundamental attribution error rears its head, because the feedback giver is going to keep thinking it's about something that you did wrong, the other person, but the feedback receiver is going to more and more blame it on the circumstances as they defend themselves. So when you give someone feedback, if you want a good brand around this, give the feedback and then move as quickly as you can into what's going to happen next. Like, what's the resolution? What's the path forward? What are some ideas this person can use to move forward? Don't keep them in that place. I call it that place of shame, where we know we did something wrong for very long. Name it and then move on to the future place of love and honey and milk and cookies. And I don't mean like milk and cookies like, oh my God, you're fabulous. I mean, milk and cookies as resolution.
Yeah. And do you think that it's important to have follow-up to say, like, okay, how did you incorporate this feedback with someone?
I do. And I think as a feedback receiver, it's really important for you to do the follow-up to initiate it. But I do think for both parties, especially if you, like, let's say I had to give someone difficult feedback and then I gave it to them. If I see a change in their behavior or the performance, it's on me to go to them and say, hey, so-and-so, I just want to say I really am pleased with what I'm seeing. Thank you so much for taking that feedback to heart. You're on the right track right now.
Yeah. Yes. Because so often organizational cultures is just your annual review.
Yeah.
And it gives you zero opportunity to engage in those spaces and then to show the shift, except for the next year, which, there's a recency bias. So people are thinking about what you did 2 weeks ago, as opposed to what happened in that whole time frame. And it's just not, I just think common sense in the corporate space is so often not common.
Yeah.
And that people continue to do the things that they've always done. And then they wonder, well, why isn't it working? It's like, because you're not doing it and thinking about the people, you're just thinking about the process, and the process is broken too.
Yeah. I mean, the worst thing you can do in an annual review is tell somebody information that they've never heard before. I mean, when you give someone information annual review that they've never heard from, or 6 months ago you did this, you've literally punched them in the gut and in the face, and they will never forgive you for that, ever. Hey, Paul, you know who's really bad at giving feedback?
No. Who?
Lawyers.
Look, first of all, I was like, who? I was waiting for the name and social security number.
So I'm giving, so here's an example. And many organizations are, but I find lawyers, it cracks me up.
Yeah.
Because I don't think of lawyers as being conflict averse. So I'm preparing a workshop for a law firm, a big law firm. Yeah. And it's a group in this law firm, and the partners want to get really involved and see what the material is. It's like a 90-minute session. So they get on a call with me and I walk them through the entire program. Here's exactly what I'm going to teach, how I'm going to do it. And then I end it. And the whole idea is for them to give feedback on this program. And then I finish it and I'm like, so what do y'all think? What's
your feedback on the feedback?
And I was like, come on, you guys, I'm looking for feedback on the feedback. And they're like, and I had to call them out individually. And they were like, oh, I thought it was great. I would change this. I'm like, okay, so you want your people to learn how to give feedback, but you all can't do it in a safe space like this. So the other thing I would say is, if you are in a leadership position and you want people to give feedback, you have to model doing it. That should be part of your brand too.
And you have to model receiving it well.
Yes.
I think for leaders, the biggest, because being a leader, I would say, is it's the hardest thing, right? The reason why you get paid the big bucks and you get all the, the crown that can topple if you don't do this right is because it is hard. But having an authentic space and really being able to say, I want it. And then when you receive it, to hear, even if you don't agree with it, I appreciate it. Leaders would change the game. They would change it. But again, that ego piece kind of gets in the way of building the trust sometimes.
It does. Paul, I probably get more emails around how do I give my boss feedback, or my boss has asked for feedback. I don't trust he, she, or they will hear it. What do I do? It's so common. And you are so right. If leaders, if we could just wave our magic wands, if you could do some black girl magic, I'll do some white girl magic, and we'll make this happen. Like if leaders would just be able to seek out and act on and hear their feedback, I think that would do wonders.
100%, 100%. And yeah, I just got a thought in my mind. We'll talk about it afterwards.
Okay.
Okay. I'm really glad we did that, because I think that there's so much actionable things that you just mentioned. I want to go into some of the things that I ask everybody on the podcast. And for you, the answers might be a little bit different because you're you and fabulous. So there are 2 points in my podcast that I ask everyone about, which is, one, what is your aspect of your brand that you will never compromise on? So it's like their stand by your brand moment. So what about you, values, whatever it is, how it shows up for you in terms of the question, that you'll never compromise on?
I think there would have to be, I'm never going to be Miss Corporate Straight-Laced. I am always going to be pow, in your face, fun, energetic, truth-telling, but positive. So I'm never going to be like a professor on the stage. I'm always going to be a little rough. I'm never going to be perfection. I'm always going to be, a little like that.
I love that. I thought to myself, we could just switch windows and that would be the same answer that I would.
We really are the same person.
we are BFFs, and that's enough. Okay. So the second piece is the branding room only moment. So branding room only is a play on standing room only. And so for you have a lot of people who are in rooms who are there to hear you speak. But is there some talent, skill, thing about you that folks would be in a room with standing room only to hear, see you do, or experience?
Oh my God. I don't know. That's such a great question. Hopefully they would be there to hear me talk about toxic bosses, or to talk about bosses in general. So I think they would come to hear me tell the truth about the state of bosshood in America.
Bosshood. I love that.
Or they want to hear old bar stories, because people do love my old bar stories.
I'm going to go off script for a minute. Do you have a favorite cocktail that you love?
To drink or to make?
But one of each.
Okay. So when I was a bartender, owning my bars, I made a really great martini and a great margarita. So I used to love making those. I don't drink either of those. I do kind of drink margaritas. And for my drinking habits, I'm kind of a wine slut. I'm a Sauvignon Blanc, Sancerre kind of gal. But if I'm going to have a cocktail, I really like a mojito.
I love it. My favorite is an old fashioned, and I know that you are a terrible, terrible bartender if you're unable to make one, because I'm like, that was like 101. I took a bartending class in Boston when I was in college. And literally the only thing I remember was they taught us how to make an old fashioned. And I thought to myself, I never want to do this because I don't want to mess it up. Because
old fashions are making a comeback.
Yes.
Like old fashions in Manhattan's are making a comeback. So you should have no problem having people make those.
I love
I've been thinking about dipping into the old fashions lately.
They're really awesome. I'm going to Kentucky, and I'm just very excited to go there and experience bourbon in all of its shape and form. Okay, Mary, I knew this conversation was going to be fun. I knew it was going to go by quickly, and I knew that you were going to drop so many gems for my audience. And I really appreciate you talking about managing up and feedback and being fabulous and all of the things. And how can people find out or connect with you away from my podcast?
Oh my gosh. Well, that's so sweet of you. Well, people could always find me on LinkedIn. That's probably the easiest thing. Mary Abbajay, easy peasy to find. They could check out our podcast, Cubicle Confidential. They could go to my company's website, Career Stone Group, or managingupthebook.com. They can find me on Instagram, on Facebook. I'm at Mary Abbajay ever. But honestly, LinkedIn is the best place to find me.
Yep. And also take her LinkedIn learning course. Thank you very much.
And of course, go to Amazon and buy
Yes, that's right. This is the perfect stocking stuffer, no matter what time of year you watch this. Go ahead and get Managing Up. Mary, thank you for joining me in the branding room today. And everybody, make sure you share this with a friend, share it with a boss, and have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye, y'all.